Welcome to another episode of the Quarantine Kitchen. Today we're going to be making an orange olive oil cake. Very simple. Not every cake needs a buttercream or a frosting and be iced. This is going to be a very simple preparation. It's going to be we'll call it egg foam. We're going to fold in our dry ingredients. We're going to talk about how to properly prep a pan without using parchment paper. We'll talk about the bake, and this is kind of a great thing if you have really any citrus lying around. Could be substituted into this cake. So first things first, let's dive right in. Eggs, you need 2 of them. We're going to crack 2 eggs into our mixer. You're going to need the whip attachment for this. So 2 eggs, 3/4 cup of just regular granulated sugar. Now what I suggest is before we start whipping this, kind of combine the 2 with the whip. This is going to make it so you don't end up with any dry sugar at the very bottom of the bowl. And this is going to whip up for quite a bit, but in the meantime we're going to talk about how to prep the actual pan. You're going to be on high for about 8 minutes or so. What we're looking for is something really light and fluffy. Should be very aerated. You'll see what it looks like. Now we're going to be prepping the pan itself. So I have an 8-inch cake pan here. I typically like the deep ones. They're versatile, so if you want to do a bigger cake you can. But if you have a more shallow, again this is 3-inch. If you have a 1.5 or 2-inch, that'll also work for this cake. What you're going to need is pan spray. Shake it up. Whichever brand you like. Don't get the one that has like flour already in it. Don't get the one that's olive oil. Just a good old-fashioned canola vegetable oil pan spray. We're going to give this a light spray all the way around, and it's light. It shouldn't be pooling up anywhere. It's really important. And we're going to take a little bit of just loose flour. We're using cake flour in the recipe, so we're going to use cake flour here. What you want to do is kind of just shake all this around so it lightly coats the whole thing. But what's really important is getting this all back out. I suggest doing this in your sink if you're at home. If you want to recoup the flour, you can do this just on the counter with some parchment. Have something down so it's easy to pick it back up. But what I'm just going to do, and I'll be off camera when I do this, so I'm just going to, right in my empty sink, I'm just going to give it a good tap. And then we'll take a look at what it looks like when it comes out. So, it's nice, light, everything's coated. You don't have any clumps or anything on there. If there are clumps, that's where it's going to stick. Luckily, there's a lot of oil in this recipe. So once our batter is done, we're gonna get the whole thing in here. So we'll wait until our batter gets done mixing, and then we'll talk about how to get it in there. Okay, so our egg foam is all light and fluffy. Let me show you what that's looking like. So again, light, fluffy. All right, it's not going to hold a peak like a meringue, but you shouldn't have any huge bubbles left over at this point. Now, next thing we're going to do is going to be adding our oil and our vanilla. We're going to do that while it's mixing. The vanilla can go in before that. I've got a teaspoon of vanilla. That's going to go in. I'm using vanilla bean paste, but extract will also do. Now, when we start adding the oil, it kind of acts as an emulsifier with the egg yolks that are in here. So that really makes a very stable foam. Olive oil, good quality olive oil. You don't want something peppery, something a little more fruity would be nice. What we're going for is a 1/4 cup plus a tablespoon plus a teaspoon. Yes, you need to be that obsessive. So we're going to start slowly streaming that in. And I do mean slowly, it's a light drizzle. Preferably use something on a spout. Now it's getting in there, we can increase speed. Make sure you're pouring down the side of the bowl when you do this, otherwise it will hit the whip and come right back at you. Almost all on there. And crank that up. You won't want to really see any oil left over, but don't worry about scraping down. It will do all the work for you. And you'll notice you end up with something that's more like a mayonnaise consistency. That's what we're looking for. It's going to make it really stable. Just about there. Good. Next thing, you gotta talk oranges. You're going to need a total of 4 oranges. 2 of those oranges need to be juiced and zested. We just need the juice of 2 oranges, but we also need the zest of that. You're going to need 2 more oranges and just zest those. So, zest of 4 oranges, juice of 2. I like using mandarins. They're better juicing, they have more flavor in the zest. They tend to be a little more ugly, but are you going to see it in the end? No, doesn't matter. So, juice is going to go in first. We're just going to gently stir that in. Again, a nice drizzle. And then we're going to go in with the zest. We're going to start folding in the zest when we fold in our dry ingredients. The pulp in here doesn't matter. Just juice it straight from it. Just make sure you don't have seeds. I don't want to bake those in there. So we need a rubber spatula for this. Good, trusty silicone spatula. You say rubber, but they're actually silicone. Alright, so our whip can go away. Take this off of our mixer. Put that out of the way here. So you can see what we're doing. Alright, so one little scoop all the way around. Make sure you got everything. So you should have something that's light and fluffy, but it's going to be a lot more liquid than it just was. That's because the juice is in there. So, zest of 4 mandarin oranges. You could really use anything you want, but I like these the best for flavor. I'm just going to give those a quick little stir. At this point, we want to be relatively gentle. We're not relying on this cake to just be leavened by whipping eggs. We do have baking powder, baking soda, which we'll talk about in just a second. So if we lose most of this air, that's perfectly okay. Okay, so let's talk flour. Cake flour. You're going to need 1 1/4 cup sifted. Sifted is important. You will also need 1 teaspoon baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and then salt. You're going to need a 1/2 teaspoon as well. So all of those can go in with our dry ingredients. If they're clumpy, make sure they get sifted through, but if they're not, you'll be good to go. And what we're going to do is we're going to sprinkle about 1/4 of this at a time on top. Everything incorporated there. All right, and we're going to fold that in. So good folding technique. So sprinkle, kind of just enough to coat. Should be about 25%. You're going to be coming down in a J-like motion. So you're going to be coming down and scooping over. Down and scooping over. You're scooping to the bottom of the bowl, then turning over onto itself. Your other hand, whichever your non-dominant hand is, you're going to be grabbing with the bowl and you're going to be pulling the bowl towards yourself. So it's this type of motion. Now this first little bit, it's going to not want to incorporate. Don't worry, we'll get there. But be slow. Right? If you go too fast, you're going to knock out more air. But we also want to make sure that if there are any lumps that form, those are coming out. Make sure you're scraping down the sides. Otherwise, we're going to have flour that didn't get fully incorporated. You're going to have a big lump of flour in the finished product. We don't want that. All right. Next, another 25%. Easy as that. So cakes like these, they're great. They also freeze really well. So you can slice up the whole thing when it's done. And then you know you're having guests over, or you just want a piece of cake with a scoop of ice cream. You can definitely do that. Be quick to frost, and you are good to go. I always keep random desserts in my freezer at home because you never know who's going to stop by. And it's really impressive when people think that, oh, you just made this? No, I made that a week ago, but I wrapped it up really well and it's good to go. All right, so get all that incorporated. If you have like little flour bombs, little chunks that didn't quite sift up as well as you would have liked, you kind of just gently press them on the side, and they should break apart. If you notice that you did not sift well at all, you don't have a sifter. What you can do is make this whole batter, let it sit after you incorporate everything for about 10 minutes, and that flour will have hopefully absorbed all the way through. Just give it a one gentle mix through, and you should be good to go. All right, now we have about 75% of our flour in there. Fold, fold, fold. At this point, it should be easier to incorporate it. Just do make sure you're scooping all the way to the bottom. You need to scrape the bottom, otherwise you're not fully incorporating things. And make sure you're getting the sides as well. Very important that all the ingredients end up in there. Gentle little stir there. Get this all in. But take your time. Take your time. When we do this commercially, I would have a buddy with a huge thing of flour just kind of, as I'm folding, they're going to be adding all the ingredients. All the dry ingredients. All right, last little bit. Get this all here. What's important is don't overmix it. Once everything's incorporated, you're good to go. A lot of people tend to overdo it when they mix cakes. With cake flour, you're less likely to get tunneling, which is the overmixing of the flour. Creates too much gluten development, and you get these little, look like worms that are eating through your cake or your muffin. Don't really have to worry about that too much with this style cake, but it could happen. Now you should be getting like an explosion of orange off of this. Really good when, you know, citrus is in season. Nice thing about California is it's usually always pretty good. But even still, you can freeze zest when it's in season, coming right off the tree. Zest them, freeze them, juice, freeze it. Do it in small kind of batches, and you'll be good to go. So here we have our nice little batter. That's what we're looking for. Should be slightly thickened. Make sure we don't have any dry bits stuck on the spatula. We are good to go. Let's get this out of the way. We have our prepared pan. Now you could just spray this, cut a piece of parchment in the bottom. You don't have to flour it at all. But if you don't have parchment lying around, you can just do that. This is going to go in. Scrape it all in there. You're not supposed to be eating batter straight out of the bowl. You're not supposed to. That's what I'm supposed to tell you. By all means, though, try it. All right? You can try it. It's not going to necessarily kill you. But be mindful that there are raw eggs in this. So be careful. All right. So all that's in there, it should pretty much self-level. If not, just kind of give it a quick little mix around here. This is going to go into a preheated oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. It's going to take about 25 to 30 minutes to bake. It's a relatively shallow cake, but it should be a nice kind of spring up when we're done. So this is going to go in the oven, and when we see this next, it'll be coming out, and we'll take a look and see how we're going to finish it. So our cake is out of the oven. All right, take this out. Takes about, again, 25-30 minutes. Let it cool. It'll still be warm in the pan, and that's okay. What you want to do is take a paring knife. We're going to cut around the edge here first. Make sure to keep the blade right tucked in the edge. There's so much fat in this cake, you really shouldn't have sticking issues as long as you have a nice quality pan. So that comes out, take that off. What I suggest is always do a little bit of a shimmy back and forth. By doing this, you help release it from the edge. And you'll see it shake a little bit, just a little. I'm not going back and forth too much. But once you see that it's all released, you're going to be good to go. Now, if I was to just take this out, you'll notice that it's going to be a little tacky on top. Granulated sugar. I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit. This kind of acts as like a non-stick barrier, which is nice. Just kind of spread it around. Don't put too much because it's just going to end up all over your kitchen. Flip this out onto a nice flat surface. So I just have a cutting board here. And we have our nice little cake. Now, options on the actual plate up of this. I like serving this actually upside down. As long as you didn't over flour, you shouldn't have a lot of excess. But what you can do is if you have some, like a film on the bottom, if you just kind of rub this here, you'll have a lot of crumb come off, but it kind of cleans the whole thing up a little bit. Same thing with the sides. Just run your hands around. Now you can serve this as a whole cake. I'm going to do it as a slice. But I suggest to garnish the whole thing separately, and then you can kind of put it on the plate and it's nice and clean. So we're just going to have powdered sugar. You could also use powdered dextrose. Nice little dusting all the way across. Make sure not to do this in a windy part of your kitchen, otherwise it's going to fly everywhere. And powdered sugar, so it's kind of up to you how much you want to add. I wouldn't go too crazy, but make sure you get a nice coating all the way over the whole thing. Get that nice. Great. And then we're going to cut it. So clean knife. Make sure it's clean. And we can cut this whole thing. You'll notice often with this cake it tends to collapse a little bit in the center, and that's okay. That's why we're serving this upside down. But just kind of keep that in mind. You have a nice slice here. And you can serve this with a lot of different stuff. I like to keep it pretty, have a clean presentation. Notice sometimes the slice isn't going to be perfect because you hit a piece of zest. That's okay. But nice piece of cake. All right. Simple. This can be garnished with a lot of different sauces. You could do a vanilla sauce with a lemon or an orange kind of a filling. You can do a lemon curd, a lot of different things. I'll plate up a little something so you can see it as a finished product. But this is just very simple. You know, orange olive oil cake, nice and easy. Use fresh citrus. You can do it lemon, you can do it lime, you can do it grapefruit, whatever you're kind of feeling. So, enjoy.